Wonderful to be here with you today and, to discuss my favorite subject, the thing I love to discuss the most. Let me get the camera right here. Yeah. Notice the different background. I turned everything around. I thought, okay, people have seen enough of my bed. I think I've proven the fact that I do make my bed, and not just for the show. I like it that way. But I thought the nice green, the beautiful trees out my window would be a nice thing for. Are you hearing me okay? Is the sound loud enough and crisp enough? I've got the settings the way I normally do. So hopefully the sound is important and actually more important than me, than the face. Well, this is one of those days where I'm not really sure I have anything to open with while people are joining, anything to say. There are times for all of us. Look, something just came to say, right? That are essentially times to be contemplative. Contemplation is not really well practiced these days. There's definitely thinking. There's a lot of thinking going on, even some very good thinking and some very bad thinking. But contemplation is different. For me, anyway, my experience of it is when something comes up I've never experienced before, or some idea that feels true to me, some expression of truth, and I recognize that there are other dimensions to it. There's more to it than just, oh yeah, that's true, and moving on. The pathway that we walk to self-realization, to the truth, is a contemplative path. It's like that. It isn't like, you go to school, you get the information, you put it on the test, you get your grade, and you move on to the next grade. It's nothing like that at all. It takes pondering, because when a new insight, discovery presents itself to you, it's going to be, if it's really heard, it's going to be contradicting some patterns of thought and habit and action and behavior. And the cleverness of the sense of a person, the egoic mind, is such that it can just take that new information and spin a whole new version of you that's equally false, right? But just, it just looks better, smells better, right? I see this so often with, well, it happens to all of us on the path of non-dual self-inquiry, because non-duality is so different. It's a completely different way of contemplating. It's a completely different way of approaching the question of what is truth and who am I? And so until that becomes clearer, which is a little more mature stage, the information is going to be processed, categorized the way we do everything else. And then the sense of a personal existence, the ego, or the sense of a personal self, a separate self, will use that new information to construct a better version of me, of the self. But a contemplation is when you say, when you become aware of this activity, aware of this energy, this pole, this force within the human consciousness, that's what it does. And that's what accounts for the distortions that have shown up about non-duality. The, the making it really just about mind, and 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 understanding these concepts, which are attractive concepts. I agree. They're beautiful when you look at them as a concept. They're perfectly reasoned. You know, the logic is flawless. The conclusion is flawless. But it hasn't hit here. It's still up here. And until we develop a sensitivity to that through contemplation, and usually it requires a teacher to poke you a bit, um, we we settle for that. For the mind, that's satisfying. Oh yeah, I know now. I know. And then someone comes along and says, "Who's the I that knows? Tell me about that." And if that sinks in, then a contemplation begins. It's like, wait a minute. There's another sense of identity. I've just shape-shifted into something else. What's really me? Who's really here? When I say I, what do I actually mean? These are not things that you can just get an answer to and be satisfied with it. And at some point, the very fact that you get something intellectually and you become sensitive to the fact that it's not quite satisfying, it's a very good state. It's a very good place to be, because now you recognize that the confirmation or validation, verification of the truth isn't going to come from good logic. It's going to come from somewhere else. And right now, our first awareness is, this doesn't feel right. It's not enough. It's not adequate. There must be more. Then that kicks in, and now our seeker mind goes to work, and maybe it collects more information. Whatever the particular pattern is, your life has gone in. But eventually, you see that even that is also just another shape that we have shifted in, and little by little, the inquiry becomes increasingly penetrating. Becomes more and more sensitive to that which it isn't. Right? It sounds good, but it's not the real thing. Looks like a diamond, but it's not a diamond. Looks like a hot dog, but it's not a hot dog. It's grotesque. Tofurkey and as bad as hot dogs. I digress. You can taste it, right? It's got a bad smell. Something's not right. And that, as uncomfortable as it is, because you can't settle anywhere with that. And if you don't suppress it, you realize that that is the guidance of truth. Because the reality of you, who you really are, is not knowable. Because you're not a thing that can be known. The perceiver of everything, which is you, the self, the real self, is not a shape that can be perceived. This recognition takes us really beyond simply intellectualizing, because how do you intellectualize about something that is completely impalpable to our senses and to our mind? How then do you come to know it? Well, this is the contemplation. This is the groundwork of deeply and honestly recognizing the unsatisfactoriness of all the answers you've had, but and then recognizing that the only reason they are unsatisfying is because something inside you knows what the truth is. It's the only reason it could be there. To simply recognize that doesn't feel right in all aspects of our lives is an indication that something inside us does know what feels right. It's 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 proof, actually, confirmation that there is truth, and it is in you, and it is at the heart of you. And if we pay attention to it, it will guide us, or that is my sense of self, back to it until you merge with it. So, yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. Take a sip of my latte and say hello to everyone. I think the picture is better too. Still having some problems. Sometimes it freezes, and I have to try to do something about. And the mic being right in my face like that. But nonetheless, there it is. So yeah, the background's nice, isn't it? Although now this is what I was looking at while I was doing satsang and everything else. Now, on the other side of the screen is what you were looking at before. So now I'm the one who has to stare at the bed, and you get to look at the pretty trees outside. The one actually is a sequoia redwood. It's just enormous. So, all right, let's kind of go back through here, and I welcome comments and questions and insights and a call for a request for just corrections of direction a little bit. And we're here to take a step deeper into ourselves. That's the journey. The journey back to many call God, which is just the self. I am that I am. It was announced that in that myth. The Moses story is a myth, which means it's a story to illustrate a point. Doesn't mean it was a lie. It's just not historical. But again, I digress. What's with the digressions? You may have to try to stop me. Let's see if I can get the cord out of the way here enough that I'm not bumping into it while I'm hitting this guy up here. So Rosario in Madrid. Good. Sometimes I get so happy to see you all. Roberto in Lisbon. Wow. Wow, great, good for you. Fantastic. The man who just gets to go all the cool places in the whole world. Hello, Ella, from the windy south of Sweden. Roberto, I've got a big and uncomfortable feeling of being alone, GP. Yeah. I get that too. Yeah. Welcome to being human. This is not something we need to turn into a problem. Because when we say it's a problem, immediately our minds and our habits and our conditioning and our education all kick in to try to find a solution for it. Oh, I got to get a partner. I've got to find a hobby, or I've got to, look better so I can attract people. I got to go on dates. I got to get on Match.com. I've got to spend more time with family. It's all the ways in which we try to repair something, right, that I'm gonna kind of announce that it's not a problem. It's just a feeling. So just for a moment, be with it. Oh, there's a big, uncomfortable feeling of being alone. Oh, whatever that feeling is that you've identified as aloneness or loneliness. Maybe it's even a fear of being alone. Okay? So just don't give it a history or a past. Don't give it a future. Don't give it any meaning whatsoever, other than right now there's a feeling of being alone. Now, before that feeling came, you weren't having that feeling. It came, didn't it? And when it came, our minds immediately kicked in and said, oh, there, labeled it, big uncomfortable feeling of being alone. And then what am I going to do about it? How do I fix this? But notice, that's all the mind, the story after the fact, the meaning given to it after the fact. Now, see that they're two separate things and set the meaning apart. And what remains? Just a feeling, a sensation, right? Now, don't give it any other meaning than that. Just be with it. Oh, there it is. Now, this is the practice because we assume this is a problem that has to be solved. But even calling it a problem is coming from the mind's meaning that it is given to it. And this is our culture and our education and all of that. It's not you personally, it's just the way we're all trained. But notice that that feeling of being alone, big and uncomfortable, doesn't announce itself as a problem. It's just a feeling that's there. In fact, it doesn't even say, look, I'm big and uncomfortable, aren't I? It doesn't do any of that. That's all happening after the feeling arose. Now just be with the feeling with no story and see what happens. Just watch it. Whatever comes will go. And it doesn't need your help to go. As a matter of fact, the more we make it into a problem, the bigger deal that we make it, the more it hangs around because it's now engaged. It's been you're feeding it energy. And you're actually not even feeding the feeling energy. It's the story in your head, which is now generating all sorts of feelings. So put all of that aside. Vigilantly, with all your heart, honestly, just put it aside. And there's just a feeling here. And what happens if I don't say it's a problem? If I don't say it's a problem, is it a problem? If I don't call it big and uncomfortable, is it big and uncomfortable? Or is it just a feeling? A sensation or an emotion? It's just a feeling. This is how you can nip our emotional and psychological problems in the bud. So at this point, just doing that, watch what happens. Really be vigilant about it. And just watch what happens. Anybody who's having any strong emotion right now, or ever, try this. Really become aware that the experience, the actual experience itself, which is a feeling or a sensation, is not the same as the psychological story and meaning we lay on it. They're not the same. And that connection that seems very fast, it's almost immediate, right? In fact, the time frame between a feeling and the story is so small we don't even know that it's actually a gap, and that is a soft connection. That meaning given to it is a result of conditioning and experience and all of that sort of stuff, and really has nothing to do with the feeling itself, which is not generating any of that. It's just a feeling. That's it. It's like, touch my face, I feel my hand on my face. I stop touching my face. No feeling. Comes, goes, comes, goes, comes, goes, comes and goes. So really, it's so simple. It's so simple. Once you see that what our mind says is happening and what's actually happening are two completely different things. Contemplate that. Really dive into it. And just notice, I want to get away from it. I don't like it. It shouldn't be here. It's a problem. Oh, it's messing up my life. All of those are thoughts. and not one of them is true. Ah, oh, Roberto, I just love how you share yourself so honestly. It's just beautiful. I can work with that. Right? I can work with that. Oh, Mary. Hello, Mary. Hello, Liza. Hendrik on the south of Germany. Victor Makula. Hello to you, sir. Good to see you. There's Ava. Greetings to all. Oh, you love the music before starting. All is well. Sound okay. Good. Lovely background. Sound is good. Yes. Hello, all, says Ken Show. Wonderful. Hariom, says Chi. There's Daryl. Hello, Daryl. And Isabel. Wonderful, wonderful. There's Ali. Hiya, GP and chat. Ken Show. The true self has no shape because it is everything? Well, does the infinite have a shape? It's just simple reasoning. If it's infinite, it's boundless. No beginning, no end, no borders, no boundaries. So, can it possibly have a shape? A shape, by definition, is a boundary, defines it in, in distinction to everything else, right? So, if the true self, the ultimate God, has a shape, then God is limited to that shape. But if there's no limits whatsoever, there can be no shape. Everything that emanates from that has a shape. It's a manifestation. Everything. But one of my favorite metaphors, it's music and the song. Music, the potential, the principle, on which our experience of music is based, can exist even if we never wrote a song. The potential for music was there when the earth had nothing but amoebas in the ocean. It was there, right? But it was unexpressed. When it started being expressed through humans, it took the form of songs and grooves, beats, all the different forms of music that we see that were constantly changing, weren't they? And yet, weren't they all music? So music is formless. It's shapeless. It doesn't get into one song and get stuck there. So that's it. That's the only song we're ever going to have. It's not ever in or limited by that which gives expression to it. But what gives expression to it, you can say that is music. That is music known, as opposed to music in the shapeless, unknowable. But you can't know it except through the form, because it's not even an it. We don't have a word for it, for they, for them. It's gender fluid even, right? It's gender and species fluid. Because the self expresses itself as this microphone sitting in front of me. It expresses itself as the tree behind me, and the birds that could fly by while we're sitting here. The candles on my wall. The pictures of you, and of course you, are the self expressing. And your mind will say, "No, I'm not. The self is something out there." So, a better way to approach it is the true self has no shape because it's infinite. Well, who knows that? I just said something. I give you an example, and something inside of you is going, oh, "Yeah, I get that." Right? Okay. Well, what recognizes that's true? What recognizes that feels true? Something recognizes the truth of it, doesn't it? That recognition, does that have a shape? Your very recognition of it is the self. The seeing of it is the self. grasping that it has no shape, is the self. See, it's all there is. It's all there is, the true self. And you are the true self. Even though your mind says you're not, right? Even the mind saying you're not is the true self. Because there's nothing else but. Is there something other than the infinite? And is infinite everywhere except here? So really take that in, because remember, we're not trying to imagine or conceive of the true self. That's simply the mind trying to give it a shape, and it doesn't have one. But what else doesn't have a shape? You. The thoughts about you seem to be a shape. But those are the thoughts about you. You, the one who's aware of those thoughts, does that have a shape, a beginning, an end? The seeing itself. We have this belief that if there's seeing, there must be some palpable form that is doing the seeing. Well, what if there isn't? What if the emptiness itself is what sees? It doesn't need a shape to see. It doesn't need eyes. In fact, eyes are a manifestation of the seeing that is always there. They're a manifestation. They're not doing the seeing. They're a manifestation of the consciousness which sees. So, student of truth, welcome. I don't think I've seen you before. Hello to everyone. I'm in Wisconsin. Wow. Whereabouts? I stayed in Eau Claire for a while in 1971, where I had my first major spiritual experience. Very interesting time. Anyway, the closest thing I've found so far is that I am the observer. Very good. Very good. Now, is the observer that you are personal? Is there a person observing? Or is there just the observing? And you can tell, because if it's personal, it'll have some vested interest in what it's observing. I observe my car, and then I go, man, I wish I had a new car. That's witnessing. It's observing, right? But it's observing with interest. It's got some skin in the game. But notice that there's a real pure observing that observes even the witness, the observer that's attached to what it's observing. Don't know why my camera is going out of focus like this, but with technology. Come on, find me. Well, don't worry about it. But just notice that's the case, isn't it? That you can actually observe the observer who has an interest in what they're observing. Isn't that also palpable to the observer, to this other layer, this other dimension of observing? And now notice that even that observing is being observed, isn't it? What's that? Just keep going. Just keep going, because to even say, I am the observer, something sees that. And don't be fooled by the way, I am. That I am is being observed. It's being seen. Remember, the self, the real you, cannot be seen. Everything else can, but not that. So notice, there is something that recognizes even the observer. Can that be seen? And who is that? What is that? Ponder that. Carl, good to see you, Carl. Carl from Ireland. I still want to get there. I do. Golden Tiger. Roberta, that's interesting for me. I only feel safe and comfortable when I am alone. Goes to show, yes, a different experience. No. What it shows is the experience itself has no inherent meaning. The feeling of aloneness does not mean I'm alone, it's big and uncomfortable. Because if it did, everybody would feel that. So it means that it's totally subjective, totally the result of conditioning and training, which means it can be changed, which means we've just separated the just the raw sensation or emotion that's being experienced and all the meaning that it's been given. And it's the meaning that has created the suffering. When you see that, suddenly you become free of the meaning. You become free, and you can just let the experience be there. Just allow it to have its life. It'll come, it'll dance, and it'll leave. And it won't leave a trace. Nothing will be affected. And you will find your freedom from suffering. Student of Truth said, I was feeling the same as Roberto because of my recent story, but this message is a good reminder. Yes, very good. Yes, you're the observer of it, as you said. Yeah. But you need to be the disinterested observer. Well, you actually are the disinterested observer, observing the one that's interested. You're watching this one and do its thing. We do it all day long. We watch this one that gets engaged and do all this stuff, but there's this deeper place that you can find. Be beyond that or behind that or under that, wherever you want to try to put it, is a place that sees it all. The one seer, the one consciousness, which is yourself, the true self. Mary, I've been noticing for quite some time during conversations that when taking my turn to share, that whomever I am talking to jumps in before I'm finished speaking and talks about, let's see if I can move this down, and talks about themselves. There it is. I stop and listen to them, completely forget I was going to say. I don't interrupt them in conversation. Wonder what it's about me that I'm not seeing, that I have this happen. It brings up the old feeling of not being heard or nor seen. Okay. When a long time ago, you started to notice that you weren't being seen, heard, or regarded. Let's put it in that way. I'm not being regarded or valued. That's really what's the root of it, right? So I'm not seen or heard by somebody I don't care about. Who cares? It's a lot of people I'm not seen or heard by. So what matter? What matter is it? Now, when that started happening to you, it probably goes back to parents and the like. And then in church, our religious upbringing, we don't listen to you. You this is the truth. You don't know anything, so you're not important. And so then there's feeling. It gets into us that I'm not worthy of being heard. Right? And then when somebody starts interrupting you and speaking over you, you just kind of withdraw. Right? That is, the energy that's used to that withdraws. But now you're seeing it differently and say, well, but yeah, what I do have is important. But here's where you got off the track. What is it about me that I'm not seeing that has this happening? Nothing. It's just happening. People talk over us all the time. Again, it's like with Roberto. You're giving it a meaning now it doesn't have. In this case, you're associating it with when these things happen to you, when you were actually being belittled and demeaned. And then later on, as you developed more maturity, you say, well, that's not true. I'm going to now, it does matter. I do have a right to be heard. And now I'm going to invite you to go one step further and say, you know what, I don't give a shit. They hear me or not. She's going to speak over me? Fine. Let her. You know, I will just, I will, you know, the space opens up for me to speak, I'll speak. If not, fine. It, it does not matter. Right? There's nothing about you that you're not seeing to have this happen. We don't want to invent a problem where there isn't one. Right? We don't have to become someone now trying to fix themselves. And the evidence that I will be fixed and I'm no longer, you know, subject to those feelings of not being seen or heard is when people stop doing that. There's a couple people in this house that I live in. They do it all the time. They do it all the time. And I just go, oh, yeah, I just, you know, because if they're doing that, what it means is that when you are talking, they're not listening to you. They're planning what they're going to say next. They're not listening anyway. Now it's really overt, right? But when they're looking like, right, they're just planning the next thing they're going to say, which is usually some way in which they can tell you you're wrong and talk about themselves. So who cares? Who cares? If there's an openness, right, that there's a conversation going on with two people who really want to get to a better level of truth or of understanding or of close intimacy or of you know, clarity with one another, right? That's a different space altogether, right? And in that space, there will be space for you to hear, to speak, and you'll feel it being heard because they will really be hearing and you'll be doing the same. That's a genuine, intimate, beautiful conversation between two open hearts. But this wasn't. I see all sorts of, I'll say something and either they just step on it or hear it and then just go off somewhere else, completely ignore it or not get it, right? What I was pointing at. The moment I see that, I go, okay, I just let it go. Maybe I'll make a joke or something, right? I'll become, you know, witty and funny about that and just kind of let it go because there's no space. There's no space for an honest communication. Right? So you just go, ah, there she is again. That's what she's doing. And eventually she'll just fade out of your life because that's not what you want. You want to be heard, right? But it's not, I'm forcing them to listen to me. No, I want to be with somebody who actually wants to hear me. Oh, okay. That's it. And I want to hear them. So together we can get to a deeper level. You just recognize that. Forget about, you don't need to dig up the past, right? Because the past is just going to color this moment. We assume this moment has been created by the past. What if it hasn't? What if it just popped up? And now my mind is creating a story about it, relating it to the past. Oh, it's got to have something to do with it, just because it's a similar feeling. So what the mind does. The fact of the matter is, when anything comes up, it just comes up. It doesn't have a past. It doesn't have a history. It doesn't have any meaning. All of that is projected on it by the mind and its beliefs and its self-image. See, oh, it's happening again. Which is just saying, see, I'm the same way and I got it. And off it goes, right? It means nothing. Being interrupted comes up, it means being interrupted came up. That's it. If fear comes up, it means fear came up. If confusion comes up, it means confusion came up. That's it. Even Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Thank you, Mary. Let me know what that is. Or what I'm saying doesn't matter. It doesn't to her. So that says nothing about you. That's the key. Right? What you have to say does not matter to her. Period. Yeah. Which is the same thing if that happened when you were a kid, right, where you internalized it, it would have been the same thing when I'm saying doesn't matter to them. We internalize it as a kid. Now we can either go, doesn't matter, they need to listen to me, I need to be heard, and try to assert that as a right, or we can just say, oh, it's the same shit. Okay. Yeah, what I'm saying doesn't matter to them. Don't internalize it as what I'm saying doesn't matter. That's what the little kid does. It doesn't to them. And what I'm saying right now doesn't matter to most people. According to my little thing here, there's about 39 people listening. That means there's a whole lot of people that what I'm saying right now doesn't matter. Okay. Does it mean I don't matter? What's being said doesn't matter? Hardly. You following? Are you following? Of course you are. Melissa, hello to you. Hello to you. Ida, hello to you. Oh, you're on the shore of Lake Michigan, south of Green Bay. Oh, south of Green Bay. I spent a wonderful romantic Thanksgiving many 30 years ago. Wow, longer than that now. Over 30 years ago in Door County. Drove down that twisty road right at the height of all the fall colors and stuff. Oh man, it was actually a Thanksgiving weekend. The colors were still very vibrant. Did a fish boil. It was like wow. It was great. It was a great time. Wrote a song about it called Thanksgiving in Door County. Actually, it's a piece of music. Maybe I'll play it sometime. Anyway, student of truth. My passion is quantum physics and relativity. I consider myself to be the observer that collapses quantum wave functions and the observer that sees the universe and is seen by the universe. I see. There's one thing that is the path of science, the real path of science, which is a search for truth, which is a real search for truth, and the intellectual techniques and tools to be as objective as is humanly possible, to try to get to the truth. I wish more people practiced that, or the world wouldn't be in the state that it was in. It's not a search for truth. It's a search for control and power. But the whole scientific process was a search for truth. The process of Advaita Vedanta is also a search for truth. And they're very similar in many ways, and just the precision of the intellect, just the unswerving need to question all assumptions. But there's one key difference between the two, and that is that the scientists, the physicists, the quantum physicists, follows the material model. That is, consciousness is a product of material processes. And that the essence of the universe is what used to be matter, atoms, and that sort of thing, gone beyond that, and now it's quantum fields, which are far more ephemeral. 17 of them, I think, right now, that collapse. Right? But and people say, well, then I'm the observer collapsing it. Right? Well, that can't be that way, because the observer would be a product of the collapse that already happened. So if you're correct, and actually I think you are, that there must have been an observer right from the get-go before anything collapsed, then that observer is more fundamental than even the field that is collapsing into form. This is where the non-dualists would say, correct. It is consciousness that is primary, and what we call matter is a manifestation of that, and not the other way around. Because there cannot be an observer collapsing the waves unless the waves have already collapsed, for there to be an observer in the first place. So we get caught in that. There's only one explanation. There was something, an observer, to collapse it, who is not made of it. is not of the same substance and was there first. That even those quantum fields are a manifestation of that which is an observer by definition, which is consciousness. We just think that consciousness is a byproduct of material processes, and therefore it's this little thing in the brain. Right? That's accepted as a truth, even though, in fact, it's a hypothesis. It's never been proven. There's never been anything demonstrated that that there is a function, that there is a structure in the brain that is consciousness. And in fact, there's all sorts of evidence that it's not in there. And even some Nobel laureates have been saying, we got that one wrong. It isn't that. But of course, there's the staunch materialists who insist that, well, yeah, it's got to be. We just haven't found it yet. Right? That's not science. That's faith. It's a hypothesis, and every time it's been attempted to be proven, it's been disproven. So the process of intellectual honesty and clarity and earnestness and a willingness to scrutinize and examine even my most cherished assumptions is science. That's it. I mean, that's the heart and soul of it. And to try to find ways to prove that something is objectively true. It's not true just because I believe it. I believe it. But it runs into this wall. And it runs into the wall because materialism cannot fathom what the non-dualist regards as the reality. That is, consciousness came first. And I'm not talking about a personal consciousness like I or me, that there's this universal consciousness that's first, that then within that form took shape. But thank you for bringing it up. It's fascinating. Yeah, I have several scientists in my as students of mine, and it's a marvelous. I wish they would teach actual science in school. They don't anymore. They just teach. Really, it's just all about practical application, making stuff, and like. It's not a search for truth anymore. At least the way it's taught in the schools here in the U.S. Probably is maybe some other places, but anyway, I could go off on that because it's quite fascinating. Ava says about what you told to Robert concerning feeling of being alone. It's just a feeling. I'm now referring to myself. It's a feeling, but of being alone. Is it truth, or is it mind's interpretation of this feeling? If I do not give a name to the feeling, it will be only a feeling without any special message. In this case, I'm alone. I'm alone is just thought. Continued. I do not need to believe it. Am I right about that? Yes. You got it. You got it. Yeah, you don't have to believe it. It's there. There's a feeling there. Yes. Obviously. That's self-evident. I'm not denying it. I say it's all an illusion. The illusion is what we say it is. We project onto it something that's not there. This is the snake and the rope, the mirage in the desert. Giving meaning to something that in itself has no meaning. It's just a feeling that's gone by. Right? The tree just waved, What does that mean? Nothing. The tree just waved. That's it. Oh God, this is such a potent thing to realize. You'll understand that all of that is nothing but conditioning. None of it's true. And this is the great illusion. Pretty simple, actually. Let's see. Jay, I remember how you would ask, who is that that's aware? It seemed like a tricky question. Yeah. Is it still a tricky question, Jay? Yeah. Student of truth, I feel part of a fractal a part of, a fractal of a fundamental field of consciousness. Yes, there is a sense of being a part of the fundamental field of consciousness. Now, that sense of being a part of it is coming out of that fundamental field of consciousness, which would mean you're both. I am the fundamental field of consciousness, experiencing feeling a part of it. How's that sound to you? Hello, Sylvia. If they just talk about themselves, it's not bad. It's worse when people are judgmental. Yeah. Yeah, just talking about themselves can be, everybody loves to do that, right? Everybody loves to do that. You can get a conversation going with anybody, right? Just ask them about themselves. Or just pay them a compliment. Man, that's a beautiful jacket. Well, thank you. Oh, it's nothing. And off you go. Back in the day, it's how you meet women. Back in the day, yeah. Mary, I am so used to you who listens to everything we say. Yeah, you're so used to it. Yeah, it's a short distance for you now out of those thought patterns that you find yourself in, back to, oh yeah, that's right. I'm just seeing it. Golden Tiger, how would you go about avoiding giving into desires that are harmful to oneself? Wow, I've done one program just really about habits, changing habits and the like. I included it as kind of a big chunk of the level 2, the big giant volume, but it was important parts that went into level 2 of my emotional healing immersion and training. Understanding, right? You can't do it through willpower, right? Because on a cognitive level, you see that doing this is harmful to me. But something in you is clinging to it because it's getting something out of it. And if you just use willpower, there's a powerful feeling of being deprived of what it needs, and nobody has the willpower to sit with that deprivation forever. You have to get to the heart of what the deprivation is and redirect it. So what it is, all of our habits, all of the things that we gravitate towards, and yet at the same time go, why am I doing this? Like a force is pulling us, right? Well, what's that force? Let's look at it. That force is something within us that got traumatized, wounded, hurt, badly hurt. Right? A need that never got met because it couldn't be met. Right? When you're a little kid, that's what the trauma is. I've got this need, but my parents are incapable of meeting this need. And it's a real need. It needs to be met, and it's supposed to be met by them. This is the nature of the human life. I am supposed to get loving attention and encouragement and validation and all of that from them. If they can't do it themselves, they don't have it, you're not going to get it. And so what happens? Because that's so painful, the nervous system reaches out for comfort. This is what all of our habits are. As Gabor Mate put it really beautifully, he said, we shouldn't be asking why the addiction, we should be asking why the pain. All of these desires are a solution to a problem. The real solution couldn't be found. So it medicates it. You have a drink, you smoke some weed, you cruise the internet, you watch You watch videos, you go shopping, you spend money, you have sort of relationships. Right? And they're unsatisfying. We know they are. No, they are. What has to happen is enough awakening take place to go, okay, what's really at the root of this? What is the real desire that this sedates temporarily but does not satisfy? Because if it was satisfied, these behaviors wouldn't be necessary. I know one story. It's very touching of a woman. Um, she was actually sought out Tara Brach, who's a wonderful woman. I really like her work and her as a person. And one of the people she worked with was this woman who had weight problems all of her life, and she was finally in her 50s. And through the process that Tara uses to get there, um, she related being a little kid, just always belittled and demeaned and hated. You know, her mother just was like on and on again. Sounded very familiar. It was like, yeah, I know that one. And so she remembered she would at night, when everybody was in bed, she'd get up, she'd go to the out to the kitchen. She'd get herself a little piece of cheese, a little piece of bread, and she'd get in the bed, pull the covers over her head, and she'd eat the bread and she'd rub the cheese on her cheek, and she'd go, "You're okay. You're okay. You're loved." Right? This little conversation, and this gave her comfort, right? To stay alive in an environment that was completely antagonistic towards her, in which there was no place for her to find comfort. That turned into food equals comfort, right? And so she was in her 50s when she was working with Tara, as far as I remember. But eventually, it took a while, but eventually that began to unravel. That found real comfort, the real comfort she wanted. Sorry about that. This is the thing I see. Happens periodically. If it happens a lot, I actually have a spare camera that, so I just turned this one on and turned it back on, and now I'm back. Oh, but the settings got reset. So give me a quick minute here to reset everything, and so you can see me clearly. I'll bring this up to 1600. Oh, there we go. Yeah, okay. So you can see how it happens. Right? And this is what we do. We find relief, right? Because if we don't find relief, we will die. That's the fact. It's just too excruciatingly painful. And that's where the pain comes from. But now that's buried. And because it is so painful, and what it is saying is, you are worthless. You are not enough. You don't deserve any attention. You're a waste of air. That's the message that we're getting. And that is so painful, it will kill us. So the nervous system simply does not allow it to be thought or felt. It gets buried in the basement, and these other behaviors get put on top of it. And this is why it's so resistant to this kind of inquiry. It would much rather have you eating the cake or smoking the weed or taking the drink than turn within, because it thinks if you find out what's actually here, you are going to die. Your nervous system believes that to be the truth. That's its assumption, which is why it takes an enormous amount of kindness and patience and love and a process of creating inner safety in order to get back to the real root of the problem and bring the love to it that gives it what it really needs, right? Which you can. Didn't get it from the parents, but you can get it from the truth of you. But it takes some training, it takes some understanding, it takes a recognition of how in our lives we have not been safe for ourselves. It's not been safe to be myself. That's the essence of it. The emotional healing work that I do with the EFT, my level 1 training and immersion is called the art of creating a safe space. That's where it starts. Without that, doesn't matter what technique you're using, what modality you might use to try to heal it, it won't work. Because the nervous system has to detect safety before it will allow a change. If it doesn't, it just stays right where it is. It digs in its heels. And you will not win against it. It's way cleverer than you are. But it responds to safety. Everything in the universe responds to unconditional love. There's no defense for it because no defense is needed. And that's what we didn't get. That's what has to be gotten. And it can happen very quickly, or it can happen gradually, right? I've seen it. I've seen miracles happen, but I've also seen very deep traumas that take a while for the nervous system to trust enough that some of this stuff can begin to emerge and be healed and be released and let the energy flow again. So, how's that? Who asked that? Oh, Golden Tiger. Yeah. Be encouraged about it, and don't be discouraged if you've tried willpower and it doesn't work. Duh, it doesn't work. Period. Yeah. The only time I've ever seen willpower work on these things like this is people have a very strong will, but it only works in one area in their life. They've got one part of their life that's in shape, and the rest is as a disaster. But you avoid they don't face that. So anyway. Oh, Joseph, why do you have an earring of a cross? The cross, it's actually an ankh, which is a cross with a little symbol at the top of the cross that means the sun. It's an Egyptian symbol, and the cross is an ancient symbol that appears in many, many, many different traditions. As a mythological symbol, it represents the intersection between heaven and earth, past and the future. At the center of this archetype of the cross sits the king, who is the mediator and the center point around which all of the opposites flow. Right? Believe it or not, the swastika that was completely, it's also an ancient symbol, completely ruined for maybe forever by the Nazis, is simply a cross in motion. Those little things as motion is in movement. So the cross, it's at the center of the medicine wheel. You'll see it everywhere. And so in the West, in this tradition, it's all about the cross of Christ, right? And the cross was in fact an instrument of torture that the Romans used for political dissidents. Right? That was the anybody who threatened the authority of Rome. That's where they were put up there. That had a mythological meaning long before. I mean, Christ even spoke of it, taking up your cross, before the event even took place. So don't merely associate it with Christianity, because it was borrowed from other places. Right? But not necessarily borrowed. It's just that these things represent fundamental things within us. Archetypes represent fundamental energies within all human beings, which is why they keep appearing places even when there's no communication between those places. So I just like the cross is a very powerful image. Christ on the cross is a powerful image. It's the king bringing a reconciliation between the flow of opposites. It represents the sense of the heart in the center of the cross, which is the chakras, this connection between the divinity of the higher order, vision, self-expression, spirituality, and the lower order, which is our animal instincts or the unconscious. So it's a very powerful image for um, all things spiritual. So I like it for that reason, and that it has the little loop at the top, which represents the sun, which represents life. That's it. That's what it means. It is the life, which is the sun is the source of all energy and life on Earth, and it also represents symbolically the light of consciousness, because without consciousness, nothing could be seen, even the light. So the consciousness is represented by the sun. Yeah. So these are all symbolic, mythological things that in the Advaita Vedanta tradition, as well as in a lot of the Buddha's sutras, it's spoken of directly. It's not spoken of in parables and myths and that sort of thing. It's spoken of very directly with the language to do so. So that's why. Tiffany, what are your thoughts on waking up anxious and feeling stuck in a hamster wheel, mainly career-wise, unfulfilling and not sure how it's going to evolve? And when you're too anxious to observe, how to observe when you're bang in the middle of the anxiety? Try to keep it short, as the number of characters are limited. Thank you, G. It's always so much love. Also, squeeze in another one. Is it normal that as you're waking up to your truth and that which isn't your truth, your nervous system desperately tries to hold on to it, and it gets worse before it eventually lets go? Well, yes and no. It's very individualized, right? And the first blush of awakening taking place is a recognition of that you are aware of the feeling, the anxiousness, the feeling stuck. A lot of people aren't. They're just anxious. They go along with the anxiety. They don't question it. Right? They might not even identify it. Right? Just this is how I feel, and off they go. They never question or entertain the possibility that maybe it doesn't have to be this way. and going even further to wait a minute, there's something here aware of the anxiety. Now, most people I point that out to, and it just goes right by them. Yeah, whatever. There's no interest in it. Nothing. When there's an interest there, it means something has awakened that says that's important. Let's keep looking here. Awakening takes all sorts of different forms and the like, but you will notice that as you begin to realize that you're not your conditioning, that a lot of our behaviors, all of our behaviors until we wake up, right, which is represented by the heart on the cross. The heart represents the crossover point where we awaken to the unconscious part, which is animal instincts and the like. The awakening to that doesn't automatically make all of those habitual patterns go away. We can feel that as if, they're very resistant. Well, no, they're not any more resistant than they were before, but now you're looking at them. Your heart's opened, you're wanting to get up there, and now we project on them, they're resisting you. There's nothing resisting you. They're not conscious. It's not an entity. It's going, oh no, she's not going to get there. It's just these habit patterns of functioning that has this momentum, and you're now sitting in this huge ship, right, which is your life. Right? And because of conditioning, unquestioned conditioning, and identification with conditioning, this huge ship is going in this direction. Right? It's who I think I am, the friends I keep, the things I do for a living, the things I like, the things I don't like, the way I dress. My entire life has been the result of conditioning. None of it has been chosen because of any kind of freedom. I have been robotic. Now, that's a big ship. Every bit of your body, your nervous system, everything is invested in that. This is assumed. This is the truth. And all of a sudden, oh, it's not the truth. I'm not my conditioning. What the hell am I? This is still going. It's not even, he doesn't even care. Yeah, whatever. And it's just going to keep going. But now you're aware, and it feels like it's this power that's fighting you. And there's nothing there fighting you other than it's just the momentum in which it's going. It's a big ship. It turns little by little by little. You know, those huge cargo ships and cruise ships and the like that are out there. It literally, I've heard as much as 30 minutes for it to actually turn, right? And they're not going that fast. But the turning, because there's so much weight that gives it so much momentum, that turning the wheel, it takes it a very, very long time to actually turn. So we get impatient. Well, I know this now. Why is it still here? Right? We say, I should, and then we beat ourselves up. I got to double down. I got to do more. I got to meditate more. I got to. No, you're simply misunderstanding the nature of the process. The seeing is there. You've seen it. It can't be denied. You can't take it away. Yes, I see this is true. And now comes the practice of how do I lovingly bring this message into the whole rest of my life. Not just the body itself, but the whole rest of my life. That is what we would call the path. Right? Once the post awakening sadhana, something like that has occurred. Right? So when you wake up in the morning, anxious, feeling stuck in a hamster wheel, there's the feeling there. Right? Don't deny the feeling. There's anxiousness, and there's a sense of stuckness, feeling this anxiety. How do I get out of the anxiety? Is the thought, right? So now you're in a position of trying to fight with the anxiety because there's enough awakening to say there's something beyond that. I've got to get rid of the anxiety now. And you've just you've created a different version of yourself, also shaped mostly by conditioning, but now it's trying to get rid of the other conditioning, right? And this is going to happen. And at some point, it might vanquish part of it, take over, but now you're going to deal with that because that's just more of the same, right? So instead, I'm aware of the anxiousness. I'm also aware of how much I don't want to feel this anxiousness. I'm aware of this feeling of being stuck. I can't get out of this. And I'm also aware of this desire to grow and expand because the circumstances I'm in right now, career-wise or relationship-wise or financially or whatever it is, are just, I feel so constricted by them, right? And, so I've got to do something in order to change those circumstances. So then I feel free and open and self-expressive and all of that, which is another form of conditioning, which is change the circumstances. Right? So now you can see that's the actual hamster wheel. That even the effort to try to get out of it is part of the hamster wheel. It's like the Chinese finger puzzles. You guys seen those, of course, right? They're like woven like a basket. There's just a tube. You put it in there. The more you struggle to get it out, the tighter it grabs. Right? You can't. But when you just relax, they come right out. When you stop taking a position. Right? So you're seeing, your awakening now can get deeper. Okay? you can go, all right, I am also seeing the anxiousness. I'm seeing this very powerful movement in me that wants to get rid of that and is trying to do that in some way, and is using this understanding that I've got now is the tool for getting rid of it, but that underlying motivation is still there. Can you see that? Right? Now you've taken another step back. All of it is on this screen. Oh, damn. Oh, look, I'm stoned in that where it froze, doesn't it? Yeah. Can you see that now, man? Oh, yeah, man, I see it. Oh, cool. Oh, the settings came back too. That's all right. Anyway, I think I covered that. And I really do want to point out to everyone that this these answers, they're not just for Tiffany or Joseph or whoever I'm talking to. They're for everybody. This is universal. We've all been in that circumstance, haven't we? We've all been there. And it's very likely going to come up again. Right? And so we're here to not change, get rid of, adjust, or anything. We're here to know. We're here to touch the inner wisdom that sees things exactly as they are, has no argument or problem with anything at all, is completely and totally at peace, and at the same time happily engaged with life as it is, without trying to change anything. That's the real essence of you. That's the nature, the expressed nature of the true self, because it's unmoved by anything. How could it be? It's like space. You don't move space. If I move my hand from here to here, the space in between is not getting out of the way for my hand. It's moving through it. So these answers are for everyone, because this is universal when we're talking on this level. Now, if I work with people individually, or I work within the groups, and I do have a private group for working with people about this kind of stuff, I can get more specific to an individual. The things that are happening for you that aren't happening for everyone else. But in general, it's all the same. It's all the same. Identification with what is not you. Identification with conditioning. Identification with the body. The first thought, I am the body. From there, everything came. Right? In fact, prior to that thought, I am the body didn't even exist. I'll just throw that out there. I'll try to explain. Maybe I felt moved to say it, so maybe somebody out there will receive it. Let's see, L, what do you do when you feel someone has an attachment to you? Well, it depends on the relationship, of course. You could talk to somebody about it, right? Maybe it's somebody that's attached to you. You don't want them to be attached to you. Right? Remember, attachment isn't abnormal. As children, we need to have that kind of attachment to our parents because they provide absolutely everything. So there's a bonding there. There's the natural need for us as human beings to become attached. Also, the people that we get romantically involved in, there's a certain amount of attachment to you. So there's gradations here that you have to look at. There's an unhealthy attachment, which is a clinging to something that in such a way that clinging is a result of the assumption, then the deeply held assumption that getting this thing will satisfy something in you, and it can't do it. There's a natural attachment. The attachment actually satisfies. It feels comfortable. We're good with that. Right? That doesn't become a problem. There's no suffering there. It's when I'm attached to something thinking it's going to bring me something that I need, and it can't bring me that. It doesn't have it to bring. That's a projection on my part. That's a misperception of what it is. I'm projecting on that because I haven't been able to look at deeply in myself, deeply enough in myself to find out what it is I'm actually craving, what I'm really needing. There you can find what it is you really need, but without that, you're always going to just be projecting on this thing. Oh, I need that. I have to have that. I'll die if you leave me, and that sort of thing. And that's what we get into relationships that are unsatisfying because eventually you're not giving it to me. And no, you should be giving it to me. Look, and then you become very critical. You can see how I can just go completely south. I mean, just go, yeah, horribly. So at any rate, um, uh, so that's what you do as best as I can put it. Again, this is one of those things that I want to probe with you. You know, when in the self inquiry sangha, so we can actually really look at it together. Right? So I can spot the parts in you specifically, and we can go to them. We can go to that part that isn't being, where the need isn't being met, right? And be really tender and loving towards it, and so actually get it met. And when that is met, the attachment disappears. It just goes because it's not the thing, the reason it was being attached has been satisfied, so it's gone. And everything in our life becomes more fluid, more genuine, and we get the capability of having actual real intimacy, right? And not attachment. So hopefully that helps. um, Student Tiffany, I have the same question for GP. I just left a career as a rat race and fat paced. Now my nervous system is trying to get me back into that career. Yeah, that's what's going to happen, my friend. Yeah, because the nervous system it's not an entity, it's a function. It's not a thing. It's not thinking. It's not when I say assumption, I'm talking about an energetic assumption. It's not an assumption up here. The body mind mechanism, the whole nervous system, gets into a position, finds within any environment it's in, it finds a place in which it can stabilize. It knows what's going to happen. It's got automatic responses and behaviors, right? Some so subtle you don't even know they're going on, to make sure that you can navigate this territory safely. It's good now, right? And remember, at that level, it is not interested in your happiness. It's not interested in whether it's a rat race or not, and you don't like it, or you want something more creative or expressive or whatever. Those are higher level interests. They can actually go very high, and some of them are not so. Those are very unconscious as well. But that's not what's important. Is to recognize that that this part of the nervous system, which is very fundamental and very powerful, its job being to keep you safe, that's all it cares about. So it isn't interested in anything else. And since you are safe in this environment and you start changing, it goes, why are you doing that? This is stupid. You don't need to, but it's going to be better. Who cares? Maybe it will be, maybe it won't. I don't know. I'm staying here. It's that adamant. You're dealing with a fundamentalist. It's not going to change its mind, right? There's only one thing that can get it to change its mind: safety. It's got to become safe for it to transition. And every transition, the change of environment, is always going to feel uncomfortable. It's always going to resist any change. I don't care what it looks like. But if you're aware of that and really loving towards this, I often call it's a rescue dog. Think of it as a rescue dog. It doesn't know what it's doing. It's just programmed. I got to stay safe. I don't trust you. If you make it safe, it will respond, and it will even allow itself to endure the discomfort that it doesn't know how to keep you safe, because it trusts you. And then eventually it comes into this new this new place, it will adapt. It will solidify. It'll reorganize itself around this new space, and you will feel like, oh yeah, this is default. Until you grow and you want something more, and it's going to go, come on, really stop. We don't need to do this. It's not important. But eventually, if you really practice this well, it becomes increasingly trusting of you and increasingly malleable, and there's less and less resistance. But what this takes is a whole retraining of our minds and our hearts and the way we approach self improvement and all of that, away from simply trying to make it be different to how do I make it safe enough that it will be willing to take a look and see if in fact its assumptions are true, its built-in energetic assumptions are true, and is there a safe way it can find, because that's its job to do, find the safe way to do it, to get you to where you want to go. This is a reconciliation between our need, our deep desire for growth and self-expression, which is constantly growing, and the safety mechanism. It's an absolute need, because if you're not alive, there is no growth. They have to become reconciled. So I called it inner reconciliation. I was hoping it would be taught everywhere, but so much for that. Uh, so, uh, so anyway, I think you said that more of a nervous. Yeah, I want you to go. That's why it wants to go back to the old, because it knows it can keep you safe there. That's, if you recognize, that's all it's doing. It wants to keep you safe. It's a friend, it's an ally, it's an overzealous friend. But because we get really focused on what we want to have happen, and then there's all sorts of self-help techniques and personal development and law of attraction, you got to visualize and focus on that sort of thing, that completely ignores this and makes it a problem, push it away, make it shut up, instead of, oh, it just wants to keep me safe. Let's work together. Duh, what a thought. What an idea. How about all the different aspects of me working together in harmony? What an idea. Where that safety mechanism now works to create the environment in which it is safe to be free. This is the essence of emotional healing for me. And I do classes on it. I teach in depth about it. It's wide open to anybody who wants to come and learn about it. And I do a private, basically private satsang with small group of people, very intimate like, also available to anyone who wants it. At some point, I think there's a recognition that there's a real retraining that needs to take place in us. We don't know how to allow things to be. We're always fighting with ourselves. Even self-help, as well-intentioned as it is the ego mind trying to force the nervous system into what it wants rather than listening to those parts of us that are only there to keep you alive and safe and are only interested in your well-being. But your well-being from the perspective of that part of us that is only concerned about safety is, I'm safe, I'm in well-being. But you're aware of these other parts. Well, I'm not in well-being. I'm not expressive. Yeah, it's safe, but man, I'm bored to death. Right? I don't have this capacity for self-expression. Everything's really contracted. Right? There's a conflict. How do you bring those guys together? Right? You can't do it with a fight. You can't do it with a fight. It will be a very uncomfortable ceasefire at best. And you can look around the world to see how well that does. Okay? Anyway, yeah, there's only so much I can explain. I've got courses that go on for weeks, to dive into this in multiple levels. So, if anybody's interested, just let me know. I got one starting. So, and anyway, so Mary says, I so love that story too, G, the one that Tara told. Yeah. Oh, you heard it. Yeah, she's lovely idea. Have to meet her someday. Anyway, some people says to take life as a game, which may help, but it feels too insensitive. Yes. Hmm. Our intellectual idea of a game is like complete disinterest, and like it doesn't matter, nothing really matters, and that's really a denial of the human experience, isn't it? So it's a diminishment of the human experience, um, because it does feel important, it does feel real. Right? To get to the point where you can see, the only way you can get to the point where you can see that it's it is a play. There's a bunch of events that are going on, and then there's my subjective interpretation of those events, which shape the quality and character of my life. Not the events themselves, but my subjective assumptions and reactions to them shape my life. And you realize that my subjective uh, projections onto the events that are happening are what are causing my suffering and not the events. Now I recognize that I'm in a play, and this play is in my mind. And and it's not the reality of what's happening out there. It's my subjective assumptions about what that reality is, and that's what I'm interacting with. And this is the game I have to figure out. And yes, it hurts. It's not a game like oh, grab another life, right? I get another 10 lives now because I just died. No, no, no. Real pain, real real distrust, real bad smells. Right? Real peaks of ecstasy, real valleys of misery. All of these uh, are being experienced, and you come to the point that the way to play this game is compassion, to be able to be empathetic and feeling, to really feel that no, there is a sense of suffering here. Right? Now, I know what the source of that sense of suffering is, and it's not what people think it is. I know the rules of the game. If you want to use that term, you could say a play. It's a play, and I now know what the play is, what the final act is going to be, and so I'm playing my character differently. Right? But a play, it's a play. It's not like child's play. It's a play. Shakespeare plays have, the last scene, the stage is littered with bodies, right? So it's not pretty, right? It's both tragedy and comedy and romance. It's all of those, right, in a human life. And all of those are significant and important. And I can't deny, oh, it's not important. I can't say that to somebody for whom it's very important. That would be cruel, even though on one level it's true, right? And at some point they'll see it. But now, right now, they see it this way. My job would be to get into their dream, be compassionate and sensitive to it, and find the way, which will be unique in every circumstance, to, to detach enough that they can see, oh, wow, I was wrapped up in this story, and that was the cause of my suffering. Right? So a lot of people will say it's a game. Again, that is the egoic mind not willing to actually go deeply into the subject, grabbing a spiritual idea, misinterpreting it according to its context, because it is not willing yet to do actual self inquiry, and then coming up with this idea that satisfies the intellect, right? Doesn't alleviate suffering, but does satisfy the intellect, and now they have something else they can talk and sound spiritual. And it is just one of the many tricks of the ego to sustain itself, right? To keep taking form. It's a very fundamental urge within the human being to take form. It's the primary thing that has really, it's what causes birth. The truth is there is no birth and there is no death. It's just a constant transformation of energy being witnessed by the self-existent, irreducible reality that we call the self, or God, or pure awareness, right? Or the ultimate seer. So Damien, were the Romans intentionally corrupting the symbol? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think they just noticed that that they just came up with a great torture device, right? And it is a torturous way to die. It's a very slow death, and that's what they wanted. Remember, it was only given to political prisoners. Somebody stole something, nobody cared, right? And uh, because Christ was preaching this other kingdom, right, that would overthrow, which many interpreted it as the Jewish Messiah that was going to overthrow the Romans and reestablish the Jewish world, which is still believed by the majority of Christians, which is why they act the way they do. What Christ really meant was talking about the kingdom of heaven within. Right? And it got all twisted by everybody involved, and the and it got enough of the attention of the Romans, who were brutal people. They were not sensitive people. It was a brutal um, dynasty that went on for quite a long time, and so he was a political dissident. When he made that, the triumphant um, entry into Jerusalem, riding on the donkey, and there were people in front of him throwing palm leaves. That was a symbol, right? It wasn't just to make the way nice for the donkey. That's what they did for kings, right? And emperors and the rulers. It was a symbol that the crowd was thinking this was a king coming, right? And now they were going to get Jerusalem back. They were going to be reestablished in at the level they were at the time of David, at their peak. And now here he comes. He's going to be the one that does this. Well, the Romans said, "Well, we're not going to have any of that. No, thank you. Grab the guy, throw him up on a cross." And the cross was meant to be a public execution. And not only did it kill very slowly, so it was seen to be a torturous death, because that was the deterrent to anybody else who was going to, question the authority of Rome. They also left the body up there after it had died for days, even weeks. So it would be eaten by the birds, and decay and smell and the whole lot of it. So the idea that, after he died he was taken down and putting it into the neat little tomb is almost certainly made up, right, by the people trying to say that he was the resurrection and all of that. So it was just a perfect torture instrument for the deterrent of anybody who was going to try to put themselves up against Rome, and boom. And so that's what it, so for them it was just a torture instrument. I don't think did Rome have that, like the Iron Cross kind of thing as part of it. I mean, it's in a lot of places you see it in Celtic and the like, but they didn't see it that way. They were a very perfunctory people. They're like the United States. It's all about the money and the business and conquest and all of that. There's nothing transcendent about it at all. I mean, that's why they have Roman numerals, right? They didn't adopt the numbers because they didn't need to count that high. It was all just counting money and time, right? They didn't need it. They didn't need huge numbers, trillions and quadrillions. That actually came from India. We call it the Arabic numbers because it went from India into the Arabic countries, and we got it from them to actually, because the Vedas and the like, the divinities and religions of the Hindu, they saw things in terms of, they were not thinking in those tiny little terms. They were thinking of kalpas and eons and trillions of years, and more eons than there are sands in the Ganges and the like. So that's just kind of how it got used, and then and the swastika, which is a cross in motion, was a symbol of a Buddha, right? And oftentimes you'll see images of the Buddha with a swastika on his forehead, or on the side of his hand or something, or on his clothes, or on his chest sometimes too, because that's what it meant. That would have been a known symbol at the time, but symbols are like that, right? They change meaning over time, and now it means the crucifixion of Christ. And some people wear it around their neck. But it has a much deeper meaning than that. It means the transcendence beyond, right? The death of the egoic sense of self, which never lived in the first place, so it can't die, and the transcendence of consciousness from the purely animal and unconscious to the conscious. That's the 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 spiritual dimension of that symbol. And now just this it all for the for the Christians it means that the suffering of Christ and paying for our sins and that sort of thing. But, which is not which that's what it means for them. Yeah, cool. It's funny because the comedian Lenny Bruce, you, was around before many of you here were even born. Very funny guy. Got in a lot of trouble because he was he was saying things that are commonplace now in comedy, but he couldn't say it at the time. He got arrested a bunch. Anyway, he made the comment once that if Jesus had been executed in modern times, all the little Catholic kids would be walking around with little electric chairs around their necks. So you have to see past the torture device to the symbology behind it. But I really do. I I used to teach a lot of that stuff about the mythology and the archetypes and the like, which I don't do as much anymore because just no, weren't enough people interested. Pretty much. Far out, says Damien. Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, it is pretty cool. Um, L, it feels like a family member is attached, and this makes me feel uncomfortable because I feel like when I'm not reciprocating, they get annoyed. Yeah, right. I, I sense that what you are feeling or sensing in them, that your reading of it is accurate. Right? But this is what, man, we all need to become aware of this. This is what egos do. Theirs and yours. Right? The ego, in order for the ego to be, it's not self-sustaining. Our sense of identity is not self-sustaining. The truth of your being, the self, is self-sustaining. It doesn't need anyone to tell it it's the self. The truth does not need anyone to believe it in order for it to be the truth. It is completely beyond. It is unmoving and unmovable. Right? Now, the false sense of self, the sense of identity that is based on conditioning, which is always, and our world is always, environment's always shifting and changing, which is why it clings. It doesn't want anything to change, but it can't help it. It is going to change. You're going to change. Your desires are going to change. The environment's going to change. The weather's going to, everything's going to change. Change is all there is. But there's this part of us that seeks stability and consistency. What it's really seeking is the self, but it doesn't know that yet. Right? Now, because of that, the egoic sense of self, which is simply the sense of identity based on the body, gender and race and all of that, as well as beliefs and everything else. This is the egoic mind, that it can never feel absolutely stable and confident. There will always be, even if unacknowledged and completely covered up, a doubt, because it can't. It's not real. It can't possibly feel the sense of its own truth because it isn't true. Right? And so that feeling, we all have it, especially as you begin to awaken of this disorientation. Right? So what does it do? Right? It's seeking stability, but because it isn't looking inward, because it doesn't think there's anything there. It's looking to circumstance. It's looking to control circumstances, and very importantly, it's looking to create an image in somebody else's mind of what it wants you to think it is. So it gives you the feedback, and the ego says, yeah, okay, it's true. Yeah, he thinks I'm cool. She thinks I'm hot. Right? That's what it, and it needs that. And if it doesn't get it, if it does get it, those become your really best friends. Right? Till you wake up and you go, this is very unsatisfying. That becomes the friends. That becomes the circle. That becomes the clique, right? Because you're all reinforcing each other's delusion, basically. Then when you encounter, like in a family group, right? When you're young, that's what you're doing. You're reinforcing. The little one takes that shape, whatever is needed to get the right response back from the environment to keep it safe and alive, right? And so the real you is buried, and any intention to find a real you is buried. So it's always focused outward, control the circumstances, because that's what it does. And so it is always trying to control how other people see it. This is the manipulation of marketing. I mean, that's what politicians do, trying to control how you see them, right? And hooking into what you want to see so that they show you what you want to see, even though it's not them. Right? Right? That's the game. Of course, we do that when we're dating. We do that all the time. It's not just them. They just turned it into an art form. Okay? When we get that feedback. So what happens then in an environment like a family where there's an energetic expectation that you're going to play that role, which means I do this, I get this back from you. Perfect, everything's okay. And they do that and it doesn't come back. They don't question themselves. What's the matter with you? Are you okay? Are you not feeling very well today? Because they're not getting back from you what they're fully expecting to get and what unconsciously they're assuming they're going to get and are not very happy about not getting it, and that makes it feel unstable, it makes it feel unsafe, and blame you for it. Something wrong with you. If it happens too much, you'll just be kicked out of the tribe. You'll be kicked out of the pack. This is what people feel a great deal when they begin to awaken and start walking on this path, and they begin to see that, and they're not that anymore. There's this conflict with their family. I can't be with my family. It's horrible. I get with my family. Suddenly I feel like I'm 10 years old again. I don't even recognize myself. And now they're criticizing me. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing it? You're in some kind of cult, aren't you? Right? Um, Anything to drag me back, kicking and screaming, into what they expect me to be, which is why it could be a very, very difficult thing. This is what Jesus really meant when he said that your enemies will be among your own family and the like. At the end, he wasn't saying that, fight your brothers and sisters and that sort of thing. They've kind of turned it into that, distorted the whole thing. Talking about in here, right? That as you are becoming who you really are, embodying the kingdom of heaven, that those that are going to be antagonistic and resistant to it are the ones that are closest to you, because there's an energetic expectation there. And there'll either be enough opening there that they'll be, but you seem quieter, you seem happier. Tell me, what is this? And suddenly they could come with you, right? Or they're going to be really antagonistic. They're going to pull out all the stops to force you back into it. It's like if you stop drinking, right, amongst people, and you're still hanging around with all the people you drink with, count how many times in the evening they try to buy you a beer or a glass of wine or a whiskey or something. Because it's like, no, you have to be, because I have to. If you're not, I have to question myself doing that, and they don't want to do that. This is the way our minds work. If you can come to understand that, and with enough depth of maturity and understanding that you see how this whole thing works, you are on your way to freedom. Right? You'll see it, and you won't be antagonistic towards it. You'll be compassionate and loving, because you recognize they don't know any better. This is what Christ meant. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Forgive them, which means find them innocent. Don't impute guilt to them. They're not guilty. They're just acting out their robotic tendencies, and they haven't seen you yet, Father. When they do, all of that will start to fall away. And because he didn't impute any guilt, there was no guilt imputed. Nobody did anything wrong. He willingly went there. So anybody who feels guilty about the crucifixion of Christ missed the whole point. Missed the whole point. Blame the Jewish people, or blame this and that, and now blame the people who aren't believing that Christ made this sacrifice. Yeah, he did. It's done. Just accept it. Forget it. Don't worry about it. There's no special thing you have to go through. This is what it meant. No, there's nobody guilty. Nobody needs forgiveness because nobody's guilty. Forgive them. Find them not guilty. That's what the word actually means. Don't pardon them because they're horrible, but find them innocent because they are. It was conditioning. It was just the way they were trained to be. And the moment you see that, now your seeing shows you that, oh my God, look what I did. Oh. Right? But at the same time, you see deep enough, it wasn't me doing it. I was blind. I was ignorant. I was brought along by a story that I didn't see clearly enough to see through. And this is a path of seeing through. A path of real seeing. And the more you see, the more forgiveness is in your heart. The more you recognize the original innocence. You can't condemn anybody. And what happens then? You become the peacemaker, who shall be called the children of God. You become the meek that inherit the earth. You become the healer. The ones who can be present with anyone. The ones who can reestablish emotional stability that can alleviate suffering. Yeah. That you become the very manifestation or embodiment of God, truth, love in human form, just as Christ was, which is what he said. Yeah. May they be one with me, just as I am one with you. That was his prayer. Yeah. He wasn't the radical apocalyptic prophet that scholars make him out to be. Which, if I was a scholar, I would, looking at the evidence from a purely historical point of view, that would be the conclusion that I drew, and that is the conclusion that they drew. But that's because they're completely unaware of the mystical thread, the thread of the non-dual, the thread of the purely spiritual, the thread of this truth that has been running through all of it the entire time. Unaware of that, you'll miss the point. You'll miss the whole point. And Jesus will just become a failed prophet because his prophecies didn't happen. He said, this generation shall not pass away until all of this is fulfilled, right? Which meant the kingdom was coming, and it was interpreted as he believed that meant the kingdom was going to come down to earth, the Romans would be vanquished, and the Jews would be reestablished in the glory that was theirs during the time of David. Right? But that's not what he was thinking. The kingdom of heaven is within. He kept over and over. It's not out there. And in fact, he said, don't say, look there or look there, right? Because the kingdom's here. It's not there to be found. But that's missed. Yeah, that's missed. And this other is emphasized. So, there it is. I just got off to my biblical exegesis is what it's called. Yeah. But those that are studying that do not have the mystic eye. They've not received the new tongue of spirit to be able to see the unseen, what cannot be seen in the actions and the words. Okay? So, hello, Jonas. Good to see you. Now, at the same time, this might just be a mind-made assumption. Well, you can find that out. Start very easily. Right? You exist. You're here. I am. Right? Is that mind-made? Is that an assumption? Or is that a direct knowing. Is that a thought? I think I am. I think, therefore I am. Right? So, I mean, if I stop thinking, I'm not. Right? There's a joke of Rene Descartes, the fellow who says that, I think, therefore I am, walking into a bar after a hard day of doing, math. And he's in there every night. Everybody knows him, and the barkeep says, "Hey, Rene, how you doing? Be the usual?" And he says, "I don't think," and he disappeared. There are so many mind-made assumptions. The path of Advaita Vedanta, of non-dual self-inquiry, is not a path of the mind. It's a path of direct looking, and it's the only way to avoid mind-made assumptions or body-made assumptions, energetic assumptions the nervous system has made about the nature of reality that it's adapted to. Those too, which are far more subtle than the mind-made ones. But the mind that made those assumptions is not capable of questioning those assumptions. But it'll just make another assumption of it because it's lost in concepts, because that's all it knows. And because concepts are not stable, they're not absolute truths. They have to be substantiated on all the different ways. It'll just make another one that's equally untrue. You start with, I know that I am. I am. That's not a thought, and it's not an assumption. That's a fact directly witnessed. And it's a non-dual recognition, isn't it? Because it's not one thing, oh, you exist because I can see you. I can't see me. I am the subject and the object. So my recognition of my existence is not one thing looking at another. It's me looking at me, and I can't be two to look at me. So that is the essence of non-duality. That's it in a nutshell, folks. That's as simple as it needs to be. I know I am. How? I just do. It's direct. Now, I know that I am, and I am having experience. I'm perceiving. There's things happening. That's seen. Direct looking. It's a non-dual recognition. Yes, I can see that directly. I'm not reasoning it out. I'm not imagining it. I'm not consulting the scriptures or some special book. Ah, that's it. Yes, I'm seeing it directly. Now I can ask, well, I am. That's a truth. So what's the truth of what I'm perceiving? So if it's something, a perception that's presenting some concept of me, it will be based on a perception of me that is not direct. It is secondary. Right? I'm looking at you and I'm describing you. Now, if you take that in, my description of you, oh, that's me, it won't be. It'll be my perception of you. It won't be you. It's not what you experience. You experience just this presence. So all of the thoughts we entertain of ourselves now, we recognize are added later. They are conceptual. It's not you. Oh, I experience myself. It gets right down to it. What do you experience? I just am. I'm not experiencing myself as something. I just am. Now the mind's going batshit crazy because there's no object for it to hold on to anymore. There's no shape for it to grab. Am I this shapeless reality? And the habit energy will be to pull you back into conceptualization because it's an object you can now look at. But the moment you can look at it, well, it's not me anymore, is it? It's subject object. It's not me. I'm looking at it. It can't be me. But that means I can't see me. How do I know me? Well, you do. Start there. I am. I am that I am. Sound familiar? All right. Mary Sykes says, my brother told me to get the fuck out of his house while I was cleaning for him because I was not thinking and feeling like he was about a certain subject. Lost some work there, but I don't need that. Beautiful GP. Oh, this is wow. Yeah, you got it, but you understand why. And I think also you can understand why the incredible polarity in the Western world now between competing stories. Okay? It needs you when it's just a story and it's a frail story, right? Evangelical, fundamentalist Christianity, the right wing nationalist or Christian nationalist and the like, the the materialists, the 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 capitalists, right? We think this is the way it should be. These are all stories, right? That need to be enforced by fear and by force. Right? That's what they do. Or get the fuck out of my house, something like that, right? Because it's a challenge and hits the inherent instability that the story has, because no story is ever true, and so it gets cling, and it will get more and more violent until it will even prefer a dictator over any kind of useful discourse, right? So it can hold on to that story and think, if I can, then I will be safe. It can't, because it can't possibly deliver the safety, because it is inherently unstable. Right? It's just, and you can see it. It's all over. It's particularly um, prominent and visible in the United States, but it's happening all over the world. This kind of thing, this polarity, right? Which is simply the egoic mind, which is also the culture. Culture is simply just a larger manifestation of the egoic mind of individuals, because it can't survive without the individual's belief in it, and 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 it attempting to assert itself as truth, right? And because it's not willing to actually look to see what the truth is, it does it through force, through violence, through demeaning, uh, to dismissing, name calling, character assassination, um, deportation, any tool it has. One more time. One more time. I have to call, trying to get a hold of somebody at Canon that can help me with why my camera is doing that, and then resetting the shutter speed on me. Back to 1600. Oh, yeah, there we are. Technology. Um, yeah, really, the only thing I want to show about that is that what we're seeing happening on the world stage is nothing but the inflated ego. It's operating exactly the way our personal ego does. And the call to all of us is to transcend the personal ego, to see how it operates. Then you'll see how it operates everywhere. You may not be able to stop it, right? Right? You may not be able to, but you'll see it. You'll know it. You'll be aware of it, and that will be the best opportunity for you. That will be the only thing that will give us an opportunity to kind of bring rationality and love back into the public discourse. I mean, we can build a better culture together. I don't know. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Right? We can't do it based on egoism. And in fact, to my interpretation of the book of Revelation, this inflation of the ego to this size is what's represented as the great red dragon. It's in the skies, right? The woman who's going to give birth to the child, which is the original innocence. You, the woman, which is the feminine representation of God, right? In a world that didn't accept the feminine aspect, giving birth to the real you. It's the virgin birth all over again, but it's you, the you that is not egoic, and the ego inflated out of proportion in the sky. The little serpent in the garden is now the great red dragon sitting there waiting to devour that child the moment it's born. It is a beautiful, although haunting metaphor to see, but it is, you can see it. It is the egoic mind just exploded into a cultural story, right? That is embodying and unquestioningly endorsing the worst qualities of human beings. And when those worst qualities are represented in an individual, they become the leader. Enough said about that, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah. So, Elsa's beautiful GP. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ava, and everyone else. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks so many of you for doing that. And yeah. Let this really take hold of your heart to such a degree that your whole being, your whole spiritual practice and inquiry rises to a new level. Because there's a whole dimension here at which all of this gets a whole lot easier. But it's also the most subtle and difficult to see. If I didn't have a teacher, I wouldn't have seen it. Period. I can say that unequivocally. So, all my love to all of you. Till next time. Namaste.